All right, here we are. It's another edition of Jonesing for Football. It's the first edition of Jonesing for Football for 2021. Bill Jones along with Cody Winstead. And looky here, it's the 2021 Big Green NFL Draft Scouting Notebook. We are 1 month away from the NFL Draft, which starts on Thursday, April 29th. And here it is, Monday, March 29th. And oh, you have a smile on your face, young Cody, because this is your time of the year, right?
Well, my time of the year, but I also love seeing the Big Green Scouting Notebook. For me, this means every day we got to be studying our guys, studying our prospects, who's going where. Are you going to fill that whole notebook this year? Is that the goal?
Well, we're getting a little bit of a late start to fill the entire notebook, which has 200 pages. But here's the big thing on these notebooks. And I've been doing this, well, when I first started getting into the draft and I'm based in Dallas, Cody's in Philadelphia, but Cody used to be in Dallas, used to be a producer, a sports producer at CBS 11 in Dallas. That's where I work at CBS 11, have for, well, since the mid-aughts now.
A long time, Bill Jones.
That's right. And also host the Mike McCarthy Show, previously the Jason Garrett Show, previously the Bill Parcells Show. Anyway, all right. So, but I go back to that 2005 draft. That's when I really started getting into digging into prospects in the draft. And when I basically started my Big Green NFL Draft Scouting Notebook, that was when the Cowboys drafted DeMarcus Ware in the first round, Marcus Spears also in the first round. It was a really good draft for the Cowboys. And just through the years, this is how, because I do a lot of TV shows at the Star in Frisco, previously at Valley Ranch, and also at CBS 11. And I can't necessarily have quick access to an iPad or a laptop or whatever. I've done it the old school way with a notebook. So I can just have this right here and I can just flip through it and find my guys that I need to talk about. And so that's what I've done. That's where the big, and where I got, you know how I got the name Big Green? Is about I started calling it the Big Green Notebook, making sure I got a green notebook, and it's a special notebook because it says 5-star on it. We are looking for 5-star prospects who are can't miss in the NFL. But I got a big green egg going back at least 10 years ago, and so I was hoping maybe we can get a sponsorship, the Big Green Egg NFL Draft Scouting Notebook, but that hasn't materialized.
I like that. Or just the 5-star notebook. What is that, a mead or something kind of notebook? Whatever it is, we need to reach out to them and see if they'll sponsor our draft.
This is like going back to school, going to college, okay? And I spend the spring semester typically studying my college prospects. I spend so much time during the fall. I love college football, but I spend so much time in the fall immersed in the NFL. This is my time of the year to start learning all of the incoming prospects in the NFL. And so I kind of, in my own mind, it's like a class, okay? When you're going back in college, you would fill up an entire notebook, so to speak. When you're studying biology or history, whatever course you're taking. Well, this is my spring course. And since I do Cowboys preseason games on television, typically 4 games, this year will be 3 games because they're going to trim it down with a 17-game season. I'm spending my spring learning these guys on the 90-man rosters, and not only the Cowboys, but whoever they're playing in the preseason. And that way, once the preseason rolls around, I don't have to do as much research on these guys. I've already got it. And I've always found, Cody, if I write something down, I commit it more to memory than so that's where I am on the notebook.
There's a method to the madness. I always used to see when Bill Jones used to come into CBS 11 and used to have that notebook in one hand and the big gulp in the other. Oh, that meant draft time was right around the corner.
I got another notebook here. This is my NFL notebook. I've got every team in the NFL in this notebook. And I started tracking these guys, every team and all the transactions they do. And this is what I have throughout the entire season. So
look at you, man. Yeah. You are old school. I'm a Google Docs. That's where I
I love that too.
Yep.
Back 20 years ago, we need to get into this, but 20 years ago when I did Ranger baseball games, I was ahead of the curve on people using laptops in a press box, and would go to, American League ballparks all over the country. And there was no such thing as Wi-Fi. Okay. It was all dial-up internet.
Plug
And
in. Yep.
plug in, exactly. And it was so hard in some ballparks, Oakland, especially Oakland, Alameda County Coliseum, whatever they're calling it now. I mean, it was the worst internet service in the world, whatever. And so, but my point is, I'm all for all the technology and everything, but this is how I commit something to memory, is writing it down. So,
right. So 10 to 15 years ago, you were ahead of the curve on laptops and computers, and now you're reverting back to the old school way. You're just
that's right. That's right. All right. Hey, how about we get into the storylines that we are looking at this year going into this draft, because there's plenty of storylines. It's very interesting. Of course, we didn't have a combine this year, but it is refreshing at these pro days seeing so many NFL personnel out and about and checking out all these prospects. And by the way, we should add that Cody here works for the NFL Network, and the NFL Network is on a daily basis providing great access for us to get into seeing what these prospects are all about.
Yep, NFL Network. I mean, it's nice. It's like kind of the world is shifting back to where we were pre-pandemic, right? It's like you said, players, coaches at these pro days, and it's great. And NFL Network is covering these things every day. I mean, we're at Purdue, Penn State. I know Minnesota's coming up, Ohio State's coming up, Alabama.
I'm sitting here watching a rerun right now of the BYU pro day and Zach Wilson, the quarterback.
That's right, Zach Wilson. They've done USD. I mean, we're doing like 60 some schools or 70 some schools, and we're covering it all. So if you're into the draft, I highly suggest the NFL Network. But Bill Jones, let's start. Give me your storyline. Let's start with what you want to talk about here, an intriguing storyline on this year's draft.
Well, I think the number one for me, the number one intriguing storyline is kind of what you're talking about, which is the difference this year without a combine in Indianapolis, and how that's going to affect things. And for even going back to last fall and last spring, where scouts weren't able to get out on the road and see all these prospects and talk to the coaches and everything and get all this information on, typically those would be on seniors, but they were way behind the curve as far as juniors are concerned. A lot of times when you're out on the road, you can see the up and coming guys and guys that might turn pro. And then we even had in many parts of the country a college season that was limited with the number of games played, especially in the Big Ten and the Pac-12. We didn't get any outside of bowl games, didn't get any SEC versus Big 12 versus Big 10 interconference games. And so it's tough to even to gauge on. I mean, here's a classic example: Zach Wilson and BYU, the schedule that they played last year. And how do you judge where Zach Wilson is as an NFL quarterback when he's got a great offensive line in front of him against far less than NFL defensive talent on the other side of the ball? And he's projected by many to be the second pick in the draft behind Trevor Lawrence. There are some, including Chris Sims, who says that he's the best quarterback in this draft. But that's just an example. And so I think you see all these mock drafts and everything, and I think there are going to be so many surprises on draft day. Maybe not in the top 5 to 10 picks, because it's pretty easy to figure out who the top tier guys are. But beyond that, there's going to be guys that are taken early that you're going, oh, I had a 4th round grade on this guy. How can they possibly take this guy? And he turns out to be a great player, just because of the limited access that scouts have had.
For sure. And it was kind of this way last year, and there were a lot of surprises in last year's draft. The differences in everybody's boards, because the best thing about the combine is you bring them all together and everyone is measured equally, instead of different types of pro days, right? And you're only playing your conference opponents, like you said. The differences in boards are going to be huge, and there's going to be a ton of surprises. I'm with you. It's going to be fun to watch. I know last year was incredible, and heck, it worked out for the Cowboys. I mean, CeeDee Lamb falling to them, no one had that happening. But that's what you're talking about, the difference in the boards and
right.
And top guys are.
And what you bring up there is the thing about the combine is everyone is on the same playing field as far as testing goes. And it's obvious on a 40, and with the timing that's done, typically, I think you probably usually add on a 40 time, you might add a half, 0.5 on someone's time. Someone who runs a let's say a 4.6 at the combine at his pro day would probably run a 4.55, something like that. Add 0.05 to a time.
Yep.
And so when we see, let's take the cornerbacks. Let's say Patrick Surtain ran a 4.41, I think was the time.
4.44.
Yeah. All right. He's at the combine. He probably was more 4.49, 4.5. J.C. Horn from South Carolina ran a 4.39. He's probably more of a 4.5 guy. These are bigger corners, put up great times. But I'm sitting here charting and keeping track in my big green notebook, all the numbers that are coming. And I'm going, wow, the athletes in this class. And then I have to, hold on a second. These are not at the combine. These numbers are, and the other part of it is, with so many indoor practice facilities, there's, some of them are done outdoors, whatever. And the outdoor ones, you might have a wind at your back, and that you aren't factoring in. But even on some of the other drills, the whatever surface that you're running on, whether it's a shuttle or a cone drill, or the comfort of home can ease the strain. The other thing that people don't think about, I think, a lot of times at the combine, but you talk to players that go to the combine, and it can be taxing from a physical standpoint, just all that they have to do at the combine before they get to actual on the field testing.
Yep.
All the meetings that they're having around the clock with teams, the physicals that they're going through from the medical personnel and everything, the clock that they're on, they're not getting the normal amount of sleep. It's a perfect situation for athletes at their pro day. They're getting plenty of sleep, the nutrition and everything. And that can, when we're factoring in a guy with a 40 vertical versus a 37 vertical or something like that, that can be the difference in someone not performing as well at the combine as what they do at the pro days. So some of these numbers that we're getting from the pro days, take it with a grain of salt.
Yep. It's funny, in previous years or most years, we don't even really count the 40s or whatever at the pro day, right? Because
it's already established in late February, what this guy is.
Exactly. What happens at the combine? Boom. That's your assigned time right there. So you can go run a 4.2 at your pro day, and no one says that if you didn't run it at the combine, right? And so, but this year, to your point, we're taking these pro day times, having to take them as what's gospel.
And the other thing about it is there are players who are going to benefit from not having a combine because scouts are looking at the tape rather than. And here's a classic example, and we'll move to your point on your big picture point that you're about to make. Tony Jefferson, safety out of Oklahoma, who's now played. Well, he came out in 2013, so 7 or 8 years in the NFL, got a second contract with Baltimore, and has had a really fine NFL career. He was undrafted. Back at the combine, and I loved him as a college player because he came on campus from California at OU and was an immediate starter and a very instinctive player. I was convinced he is going to make it in the NFL and he's going to be productive. But at the combine, he ran like a 4.7 and he tweaked a hamstring. He's not a runner to begin with. He's not he was only going to be a 4.65 guy. He's a safety, whatever, but he ran like a 4.75. And so when you run a 4.75 at the combine, you are not getting drafted in this league as a safety. Okay. And so he had to earn his way into the league a different way. And so a guy like that, who is not going to time well, but is a really good instinctive football player, he's going to benefit from not having been tested at the combine.
Yep. Yeah. Very
All right,
good.
your
Very good
point now.
All right. Here's my intriguing storyline, and I have two, and I'll try to make them quick. But we'll start with this one. This is a pro one. This is my NFL one. It was going to be about the Dolphins, Bill Jones. I had this big write-up with stats and quotes about how I thought the Dolphins were the most intriguing team in the draft. And then, boom, last Friday happens, and they make not one, but two deals in the first round. And I was like, okay, we can't talk Dolphins 72 hours later. You know, they're kind of played out. But so this is now, in my opinion, the number one intriguing storyline. And it's the race for quarterback number 4 in this draft. I think there is an elite level of QBs in this draft. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson appears to be in there, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields. Those are my 4 elite guys. Sorry, Mac Jones, you're not making it in my book. But who is going to be the team that figures out a way to get one of these 4 guys? We know Trevor's going 1. We think Zach is going 2 to the Jets. Obviously, we know the Niners are going quarterback. We just don't know whether it's Trey or it's probably or Fields. I don't really know. But who is going to move up to number 4? Or, I mean, I would think they're moving up to number 4. I don't think anyone has the patience now to wait to 8, 9, 10 and hope one of these quarterbacks drop down to them. But I think this is going to be the most intriguing storyline. Who ends up with QB number 4? I like Justin Fields. And from what I've seen, it looks like the Niners might be leaning towards Trey Lance. Who really knows? You know, we don't know for sure. But I think whoever gets up to get QB number 4, and that could be Justin Fields, I think, Bill Jones, that team is going to win the draft. Whoever ends up with Justin Fields is going to win the draft. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think I'm not surprised that you would say that, being an Ohio State guy.
That's right.
You know, I can see, I think you can make a good case for it. Now, you were a big Tua guy last year with the Dolphins, right?
You're right. I love Tua, and I still like Tua. I don't love him as much as I did, but I still like him, and I think the Dolphins are making a good move to give him another year. But let's focus on which team's going to get up and get Fields or Lance, we think. So let me run these off to you. Carolina at 4, Denver at 9, New England 15, Washington 19, and I don't think we can count out Chicago at 20. Currently, the Falcons have number 4, and maybe
you said Carolina at 4. Carolina.
Oh, I'm sorry. Carolina at 8.
Okay.
New England.
But let's run through it. Let's run through it for everyone. So Atlanta's got the 4th pick.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And actually, they've got a quarterback Matt Ryan, who is up there in years. Okay. Yep. So they actually have a need for a quarterback themselves behind Matt Ryan. Okay. Now, right. All right. And so then Carolina's at 8. Now go ahead. Say it again.
Carolina's at 8.
Okay.
Denver is at 9. New England at 15. Washington at 19. And Chicago at 20. I don't think we can count them out.
Right. I agree.
Which one of those teams, they seem like the most likely teams to move up and try to get these last of the elite quarterbacks? Because we know these teams are not going to be real contenders without new QBs. And I think it's interesting that a lot of the head coaches with these teams and or GMs are on the hot seat. Like if they don't win this year, they're gone. So I think they're willing to move draft picks next year and in the following years to get up and get one of these guys and try to turn around their franchise and save their job.
and there's one. Well, there's a new coach in Atlanta who's presumably not on the hot seat, who has that fourth pick. And there is a relatively new coach going into his second year at Carolina, Matt Rule, who has a long-term contract. It's a rebuild there. So he's not on the hot seat, but they need to get their quarterback. And the other part of this that you haven't mentioned is, where does Deshaun Watson factor into this?
There you go. That's how I was going to actually end my point, is when who ends up with these QBs, then that opens up what happens to Sam Darnold, what happens to Jimmy Garoppolo, what happens to Deshaun Watson, like you mentioned. Is Russell Wilson still available? And all these quarterback carousel. I mean, I don't recall it being this crazy in one offseason as it's been this year. I mean, it's going to be great.
Well, and when we're looking at the likelihood of, now that it appears for sure that 3 quarterbacks are going in the first 3 picks, and I would say that most people would say it looks like 4 quarterbacks are going in the first 4 picks, the way it looks right now. And that's why that number 4 pick is so tasty for Atlanta to have that. And so the way Atlanta evaluates the quarterbacks is the key here. And if they think that this is a 4 quarterback draft, okay, then why would they? You're going to have to knock their socks off anyway for that pick, I'm sure, because it's perceived that it's a 4 quarterback draft, and so they know that they can hold out for maximum value at that pick.
And you make the point. I think they're going to get some great packages to move out of that. And even for their point, if it's Carolina at 8 or Denver at 9, you're still getting an elite player at one of those spots. Plus you could be adding 1 first rounder, maybe 2 first rounders, a first and a second round on top of that. And, I think that's the compelling storyline here. Bill Jones, let me give you the first ever official win stat, which is kind of a cool fact. It's a cool fact or research, something that I looked up that I hope everyone enjoys. Here is my win stat on why all these teams are loving rookie QBs recently. And it's because the transition has never been easier for these guys to make it into the league. So I went back and looked up the best rookie seasons by QBs in NFL history. And not surprisingly, most of them were in the last 10 years. So I ranked it by passer rating, which I like passer rating. I think it's valuable. 8 of the top 10 highest rated passer rating seasons have happened in the last 10 years. So out of the top 10 seasons by rookie QBs ever, 8 of them have happened in the last 10 years. Do you want me to give you the names?
Yes.
Dak Prescott, number 1. Russell Wilson is number 3. I've got RG3 is in there. Justin Herbert last year. Obviously, he was a monster in his rookie year. Baker Mayfield, Marcus Mariota, Gardner Minshew, and Joe Burrow. According to passer rating, all of those guys have had one of the top 10 best seasons by a rookie QB in NFL history. Now, not a ton of team success in there quite yet, but individually, those guys are playing well, and most of their teams are happy with those picks. So there's my win stat. I hope
that is very interesting.
Thank you.
Very interesting indeed. And you know what? In preparing for this draft, I dug into my archives here in my office, and I've been reading Great Quarterbacks of the NFL, which is a book that was given to me when I was, I believe I was in 5th or 6th grade. And I'm thinking I might need an addition to this book, Great Quarterbacks of the NFL by Dave Anderson. Johnny Unitas, Sammy Baugh, Sid Luckman, Y.A. Tittle, Bart Starr, Otto Graham, Norm Van Brocklin, Charlie Johnson, Fran Tarkenton, and Frank Ryan. I just looked it up. It was written in 1963.
I was going to say, is that Johnny U on the cover there?
That is Johnny U on the cover. That's right. And so I just saw it over here, and you know what? I think I need the new and improved version that maybe has Justin Herbert on the cover. What do you think?
That's right. He's the new. Yeah, he deserves his own
And
cover.
it is from the prestigious Punt, Pass, and Kick Library that was published by Random House in 1963. I've got a whole library. If you'd like, I could send them to you, and you can take a look at them. It'll help you in your preparation for the draft. It's some of the keys to becoming a great quarterback in the NFL.
I need to polish up my YA Tittle knowledge. So sure, send it my way. I'll give you my address.
All right. So do you have another point you want to make on this edition of Jonesing for Football?
You know what? Let's wrap this thing up, Bill Jones. We'll save my next point for another edition of Jonesing for Football.
And that's why I think it's a pretty good time to wrap it up, because we're teasing our next edition, which will be out later this week. And what is that as it relates to the Big Green NFL Draft Scouting Notebook? I'd love to talk about this.
These new QBs, Bill Jones.
That's right.
I want to hear your top 3 quarterbacks in this draft. I think Trevor's going to be number 1. I'm not sure.
I'm a big Chris Sims fan, and Chris Sims doesn't go that way.
I know you do things a little differently than everybody else, but I can't wait to hear your list. So that's what we're going to have for you on the next edition of Jonesing for Football.
In fact, I'm such a fan of Chris Sims. I've got a picture of him on my wall here in the Boomer Sooner room.
Is Roy Williams in that picture somewhere?
Roy Williams, Superman, is also in that picture. Oh, what a wonderful day that was in my life. All right, that does it for this edition of Jonesing for Football. We will chat at you again next week, and this is available anywhere that you can find a podcast, right, Cody?
You know it. You name it, including Alexa. Just say, Alexa, play Jonesing for Football podcast. And guess what? She gets it done.
And I'm going to post on YouTube and on the CBSDFW.com as well. And we're going to get some action here leading up to the draft. We're going to do a bunch of these leading up to the draft, which is 1 month away. We'll see you next time on Jonesing for Football.
Boom.